Welcome back to Black Motives, where we uncover hidden secrets and untold narratives from history and today's trending issues. In this episode, we dive deep into a thought-provoking topic: child abuse in Africa and the role of the Bible. Join us as we unveil the complexities and shed light on the historical and cultural influences that shape the treatment of children.
The 19th century was a golden age for Christianity, and Britain exported that faith, dispatching missionaries across the world to places where today belief is booming.
Jesus is walking among you all.
That we should be saved. Amen.
Are there dark motives behind the introduction of the Bible to Africa, specifically concerning the interpretation of physical punishment? Let's find out.
Go.
In this section, we explore the various forms of child abuse prevalent in Africa and delve into their long-lasting effects. By understanding the gravity of the issue, we can begin to address it effectively.
Data released by the African Partnership to End Violence Against Children has revealed that more than half of the children experience physical abuse. Meanwhile, in some parts of the continent, 4 in 10 girls suffer sexual violence before the age 15. To talk to me more about the new drive to tackle high levels of violence against children is Dr. Joanne Nyanyuki, the Executive Director of the African Child Policy Forum. Dr. Nyanyuki, good evening and thank you very much for your time tonight here on In Focus. 30 years after the Africa Children's Charter was adopted, African governments still failing to protect children from violence. How bad is the situation?
Good evening and thank you for having me. And to get straight to the point, the situation is bad. The situation is bad, especially in the last 18 months, but consistently from 2014 when we published our last data in our last report, which showed that governments are failing in their obligations to protect children from violence. And they're failing in several ways. The first and most profound is that they do not have the necessary laws and policies to protect children. And then second, they do not set up the necessary services, programs to deliver the necessary protection that children deserve. And lastly, which has been a consistent and very worrying trend in most countries across the continent, is that the budget allocations for protecting children, for child rights, for ensuring that children are safe from violence is still very low. So in those 3 areas, we are still very concerned. So we are seeing the numbers going up. We are seeing
forms of physical abuse in Africa
in most
may
countries across
include
the
corporal
continent.
punishment, excessive beatings, or even torture. Such abuse can lead to severe physical injuries, emotional trauma, and negative long-term consequences on a child's well-being. It is part of the reasons why some Africans appear timid or have low self-confidence. In the quest to end corporal punishment, progress has been made in some parts of Africa. 8 countries have taken a stand, making corporal punishment illegal in all settings. These countries include Kenya, Benin, Cabo Verde, Republic of Congo, South Sudan, Togo, Tunisia, and most recently, South Africa. However, there are still challenges to overcome. In several African countries, corporal punishment remains legal. Countries like Botswana, Mauritania, Nigeria, Somalia, Tanzania, Burundi, Burkina Faso, and Zimbabwe have yet to outlaw this form of discipline. It's concerning to note that approximately 25% of Africa's children reside in these states, where corporal punishment continues to be a reality. This highlights the urgent need to address the issue and advocate for the rights and well-being of African children. Sexual abuse refers to any form of sexual exploitation or violation inflicted upon a child. This can involve molestation, rape, child trafficking, or exposure to explicit materials. Respect is one-directional in most African communities. It is seen as an adult or parent's right. This is why a 50-year-old can refer to a 30-year-old as a child. It is to demand that right of respect. A child's views usually doesn't matter, and he or she is assumed to be always at fault in any quarrel with an elder. So, you find people often fighting or arguing about who is the eldest or who must be accorded respect at all costs. A child must always be the one to say sorry for reconciliatory purposes because it is too shameful for an adult to do so, even when the adult is at fault. All these lead to emotional abuse, which can have devastating effects on a child's self-esteem, mental health, and overall development.
My aunt would tell you, go and collect the stick that you want me to use to beat you.
The heart of a child is wrapped around foolishness, and it takes the rod of discipline to pry it out.
When my dad was involved, it means that it's going to be really bad. The look, you know, the look is just the look. Words don't need to be said.
My name is Nyasha Michelle, and I'm from Zimbabwe.
My name is Daniel Daze. I'm from Ghana.
Hello, I'm Leon Widrogo, and I'm from Burkina Faso, although I grew up in Belgium.
I'm Noni Mushiri, and I am a journalist at Focus on Africa Radio. I'm from Kenya.
Many parents feel they have the God-given right to verbally abuse their children, sometimes using vulgar or sexually explicit insults. If you grew up in an African home, you realize that there is little to no censorship for movies or music. This is prevalent especially in the poorest homes. The psychological and emotional impact of sexual abuse on a child can be profound and may last a lifetime. The sad part is that most of these abuses are now seemingly enshrined in the unwritten constitution for African child upbringing. Emotional abuse involves the persistent emotional mistreatment or neglect of a child. This can include constant criticism, humiliation, rejection, or the withholding of love and affection.
If it got to the point where I needed to be lashed, usually, I mean, I love you, mommy, but usually my mom would tell my dad to do it. And my dad would hesitantly, reluctantly do it. I remember that so well. Most unique time was when my dad read a scripture to me first. The heart of a child is wrapped around foolishness, and it takes the rod of discipline to pry it out. So he would explain that he wants to pry out the foolishness that I was born with. And so he did that just about once or twice, but very reluctantly, I must say.
My mom, it was mostly like a long talk saying like why I was wrong, why I shouldn't do that. My dad, I would say my dad was present in the way they were disciplining me, but I was kind of scared of my dad. So when my dad was involved, it means that it's going to be really bad. I remember as well when we were younger with my sister, please mom and dad, don't be upset. I don't know if they really have a word for that, but when we were behaving really bad, we had to go on our knee and stay on our knee until my mom said, that's it. But imagine staying on your knee for quite a long time. I mean, it can be, and trust me, it was a great way to discipline us. And sometimes they were threatening us to say, okay, like if you don't behave well, I'm gonna beat you. But they never did it. I think it was just a sentence that they were using to scare us.
I do think, like, you know, sometimes myself, if like my mom would like pinch my ear, sometimes it was deserved. Like, kids can also be a bit annoying. So like sometimes I'm like, yeah.
Although I don't have kids yet, but I don't think I will ever say to them that I'm gonna beat you. I don't think it's a sentence you should use to discipline your kids. I think that's what they were doing most of the time, where they were talking to me and explaining to me why I was wrong. I think it was a great way, because then they were like talking to me as an adult. Yes, I'm their child, but also like they were trying to understand why I did that. And they were trying to, just educate me, but with words.
I find that I was more affected by the threat of physical discipline than the actual physical discipline. And it's carried out through my education. It took me a long time to actually be okay with being wrong. Yeah, because you really do not want to get things wrong, because you do not want to face the consequences you might face, and then that alone would reduce your appetite for risk and to a certain extent affect your level of innovation, because you do not want to color outside the lines.
The Bible holds immense significance for many Africans, with its teachings deeply intertwined in their daily lives. One verse frequently cited is, "Spare the rod and spoil the child." But why is this verse often interpreted as justification for physical discipline? Let's delve into some biblical scriptures and African proverbs that form the basis for physical discipline in Africa. The book of Proverbs in the Bible contains verses that have been interpreted as advocating for physical discipline as a means of correcting children's behavior. One such verse is Proverbs 13:24, which states, "Whoever spares the rod hates their children, but the one who loves their children is careful to discipline them." Additionally, Proverbs 22:15 declares, "Folly is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline will drive it far away." Indeed, any argument that the whites who introduced this harsh biblical interpretation to Africans had dark motives can be considered moot, since the whites themselves equally abused their children and only started transitioning away from that during the 19th and 20th centuries. To families that believe in this harsh form of discipline and who insist that the words of the Bible, "spare the rod," is literal, we have one question. If indeed the Bible literally meant that parents should use a rod to beat up their children, then why do you use belts, hands, legs, hot irons, and other harmful tools to inflict damage on your children? It is worth noting that the Bible is not the only source that forms the basis for various forms of child abuse in Africa. Indeed, in various African cultures, proverbs often reflect the importance of discipline in child rearing. For instance, the Yoruba people of Nigeria have a proverb that states, "A child who is not disciplined with a stick will bring shame to the family." Similarly, the Akan people of Ghana have a proverb that says, "The whip that flogs the child belongs to the mother." These interpretations and proverbs have deep cultural significance and have been passed down through generations. The belief in the efficacy of physical discipline is often rooted in the desire to instill discipline, respect, and obedience in children. However, the impact and implications of these practices on children's emotional well-being and long-term development require critical examination.
It is interesting that while Africans have generally continued the practice of physical discipline, many Western communities who introduced the Bible have shifted away from it. The gains from this shift are evident. By emphasizing communication, reasoning, and empathy, instead of violent discipline methods, children are equipped with essential social skills. They learn to express themselves effectively, understand others' perspectives, and navigate conflicts constructively, contributing to healthier social interactions in the long run. Studies have shown that children who experience non-violent discipline are less likely to exhibit aggressive behavior themselves. To be fair, it is not all bleak in Africa. Activists, organizations, and individuals across Africa are raising awareness about child abuse and advocating for change. They strive to break the silence surrounding abuse, challenge harmful practices, and promote child protection. Governments, NGOs, and international organizations are also working together to implement child protection programs and policies. Positive parenting approaches, such as communication, empathy, and non-violent discipline methods, are gaining recognition. By showcasing success stories and highlighting the benefits of positive parenting, we encourage viewers to consider alternative approaches.
After showcasing success stories and highlighting the benefits of positive parenting, it's important to note that this video is not intended to single out Africa or any particular religion. Our aim is to shed light on the broader issues of child abuse and emphasize its far-reaching repercussions. It's crucial to recognize that the challenge of child abuse is not unique to Africa. For instance, in many Western countries like the USA, corporal punishment is not entirely illegal. Recent news and studies show that physical discipline is still practiced in some forms. Similarly, in Australia, while corporal punishment is outlawed in schools, it remains legal in homes. These examples highlight that the issue of child discipline and its legal and cultural nuances are a global concern. It's time to reflect on the societal norms and cultural beliefs that perpetuate child abuse, not just in Africa, but around the world. We must consider how these practices impact children's emotional well-being and long-term development, and work towards fostering a more nurturing and protective environment for all children.
Thank you for joining us on this thought-provoking journey as we explored the complex issue of child abuse in Africa and its connection to the Bible. By acknowledging historical context, promoting awareness, and fostering positive change, we can pave the way for a safer and brighter future for African children. Remember, it is through open dialogue, collective efforts, and the commitment to protecting the rights of children that we can bring about lasting change. Let us continue to challenge harmful practices, support initiatives that promote positive parenting, and empower the voices of African children. Together, we can create a society where every child is nurtured, loved, and protected, irrespective of their cultural background or religious beliefs. Join us in making a difference, one child at a time. Remember to subscribe to Black Motives for more eye-opening content. Together, let's continue to uncover hidden truths and inspire positive change. Until next time, stay curious and be the catalyst for a better world.